We're getting into a conversation this hour, one that's absolutely necessary to have. As we're looking into the newspaper review, we saw some of the stories that jumped out at us already. And so I may think it was apt that we can have that conversation this hour. Yeah, sure. And joining us in the hot seat this morning is Dr. Henry Rotich. He's the Director of Metrology and Testing at the Kenya Bureau of Standards. And he's here this morning. Dr. Rotich, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Fine.
Karibu sana.
Yes, Auntie.
This is the hot seat of the Situation Room.
Oh, yes.
Many a man and woman have spoken of this seat.
Yes.
But we'll see then what flames it bears this morning. Because even as you're here and we're talking about, calibration of medical equipment, there are matters arising, that we see coming up. So some of these questions, we'll look into them. But to get you comfortable and to maybe pick your brain a little bit, we're going to, what we normally do is when CT is here, he's not here right now, but he usually goes around the African continent.
And gives a
he stops
proverb
in one country.
Yeah.
And he gives a proverb. And Charles this morning was able to tell us which country we're in. I'll spare you the guessing game. But the good man landed in Libya, right?
Yeah.
And actually one of my favorite countries, for example, in terms of what you can actually do if you decide that you will prioritize things. And this is the proverb for today. And we would love to then get your interpretation of the same. Putting you to a little bit of work. Walk with sandals. So the Libyans, this is the proverb. Walk with sandals till you get good shoes. What would you think about that?
Well, it's all about utilizing the resources you have as you seek for more resources. So I think you can always make the best of what you have. Don't wait until you have the best.
There you go.
Yeah.
You can actually go pretty far with that, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Great. So we're going to get into some things in this conversation this morning. And the first part of it, before we now get into it deeper, is calibration of medical equipment. First of all, what is calibration and why is that important at the Kenya Bureau of Standards? And then we're going to start to, stave off into some other things. Maybe start off with that for us.
Good. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity this morning. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Dr. Henry Rotich. I'm in charge of Metrology and Testing at Kenya Bureau of Standards. I'm also the chairman of AfriMet, which is the regional metrology organization for Africa. We have every continent have one regional metrology organization. So I'm in charge. I'm the chairman of the African continent for metrology. And then also, I'm also the current chairman of PACI, that is Pan-African Quality Infrastructure. So this is where we bring together the pillars to support the quality infrastructure in the continent.
Okay.
So to talk about metrology, I think before I talk about calibration, it's very important to know what metrology is.
Yes.
Yes. So I know most people know the meteorology, which is telling us the weather.
Yes.
But today we are talking about metrology, which is the science of measurements. Yes. You remember in 1875, or before then, people used to have their own measurements. And you would buy an item. When you reach home, you find it doesn't fit what you have.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of problems of interoperability of equipment or even tools. So in 1875, we have 17 nations which came together and they signed a treaty which formed the basis for uniformity of measurements. So we have the International Bureau of Weights and Measures, and also, as I mentioned, the Meter Convention, which was signed in 1875, provide a basis for collaboration and uniformity of measurements. So what do we do in metrology? Metrology, we have three branches. One is scientific metrology, and this is where we carry out research to develop new measurements, new technologies, cutting-edge technologies which are now used by the industry. Then we have industrial metrology. So industrial metrology is now where we are providing traceability of measurements to the SI unit by calibration of equipments. So we maintain, as the National Metrology Institutes, we maintain custody of the national measurement standards. And we also provide that traceability to the SI units through calibration and also through comparisons of measurements with other national metrology institutes. So at KEBS, we have the metrology department, which serves as the National Metrology Institute for Kenya. So as I mentioned, we're maintaining the reference standards for the country, and then we provide traceability of those measurements by calibrating the secondary standards and also the standards that are being used at the industry. If you have an equipment, for example, you have a baby incubator, that temperature that is maintained there needs to be very accurate. So we come and calibrate using our own standards to make sure that that equipment keeps the correct readings. And that's calibration. So calibration is very important because it assures the accuracy of the measurement readings that you are having in whatever you're doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is this across products or specific products whereby this process is used?
It's across all products, as I mentioned, in manufacturing and also when you're using.
Okay.
Let me also give you another example. For example, let's say you are preparing maize flour. There are certain requirements that you have to meet. Maybe one of them is you're checking aflatoxin, and you're using some kits to measure whether there's aflatoxin. So it's very desirable that those kits are very accurate. They give you accurate readings so that when you say it's free of aflatoxin, then it's really free. So this is where you talk about you have to calibrate those gadgets that you're using so that it gives you correct readings.
How many times do you then check whether those readings are, the calibration is met? Because a few months ago, I saw a gentleman who worked in this country just to check our quality of fuel, and found our quality of fuel as wanting, apart from one petrol station. Then we checked the weight of bread, and we found out that most companies do not give us the real weight of bread. So my question is, how do you keep, we know that that's what you do, but how do you make sure that it's followed?
Good. I think you remember what I mentioned, that calibration, we calibrate, and then you have to maintain the calibration as a producer. To make sure that all those scales or the instruments that you're using in your manufacturing are well calibrated, and you maintain those calibrations. And also the quality of the measurements that you're using. I think you remember in the issue of the petrol issue, there was a lot of controversy on the kind of measurements which were being done, to an extent that some were saying it was not inappropriate. And that's why we are saying you must use the correct measurements when you're measuring. Because sometimes I could weigh maybe a kilo of maize, but my instrument that I'm using is not correct. So I'm giving some measurements which are not correct. And I can create panic in the industry or in the market because consumer thinks they are being shortchanged. Yet what I'm using is not a correct instrument.
So if you use the wrong instrument, and if you've used the wrong instrument, then you're almost guaranteed to get an inaccurate result.
Yes.
So then what would be the description of that product that came out of a process where a wrong unit of measure was used, and you're inaccurate in terms of the product itself? What would that product be called? Counterfeit? Would it be called substandard? What would that be?
It depends on, because, when you talk about substandard, it means it's not meeting the requirements of the standard. So now if I am measuring for you 1 kilogram of unga, but I give you 1.1 kilograms. So as a consumer, you're happy, you're having more. But it's also possible I can give you less than the 1 kilogram. So you're very dissatisfied. I'm also shortchanging you. So you see, that one is playing on what we normally call it legal metrology.
Okay.
You're not getting value for your money.
Okay.
Yes. But we also have cases where now, maybe if you are talking about medicine, for example, and you're supposed to get certain doses. So if you're getting less, then what you are consuming might not give you the right treatment that you have, or you're getting more, then it can harm you. So you have those cases whereby you are losing money, but also there is the issue of cases where it becomes a health risk for the person.
Okay. So I guess that is a perfect segue into some of the things that we see making their way into the public arena, whereby, unfortunately, there are things that perhaps in their makeup don't meet the standard, like you've said, or have not passed through the process using the proper weight of measure, or just even their composition. And so what we have is in the market today, like we've seen, is that we have contraception that is, many say, fake, or that we have medicines that are inefficient or ineffective. We have food items, produce. CEO told me today that there's a place where you can go and get margarine that is like plastic, and you put it on bread. These are realities of things that happen. You buy medication, you ingest it. Over time, it becomes a health hazard. And these are products that exist in the market and are sold for people use their money, buy, and then ingest. Whether it is food, whether it is diapers, whatever it is, that for something that should meet the standard, there is an identifiable fake or counterfeit or below the standard product in the market, which from our understanding is all supposed to be controlled by KEBS.
Yeah, I think that's an area maybe that can require further discussion because it's something on issues to do with counterfeiting. Some of them are intentionally doing it behind maybe the surveillance. So that's a criminal activity actually that requires a multi-agency approach because the consumer who is aware that there's somebody who is doing that should normally report so that action is taken.
What do you do though?
Yes.
The enforcement, I think what Ndu also was coming to is how do we get enforcement done? And number two, some of these products have KEBS stickers on them. Who provides the stickers?
I think what we have certified, we have a way of verifying those stickers, and we've done a lot of consumer awareness, so that when you get a product with the S mark, you can be able to verify that the authenticity of that. But I think what we are talking about is a case where somebody intentionally is counterfeiting. And I think that's a big problem globally, and that's why we say it requires a multi-agency approach. The consumer is also very, very critical because if you talk about somebody counterfeiting, it means I'm riding on somebody's intellectual property right. So you see, that's where even the manufacturer is very important because can say, this one looks like mine, but it's not mine. So that's why I'm saying this requires a lot of multi-agency approach and consumer awareness. Yes.
Okay.
On the testing bit, when you said a few years ago, there was a time when the condoms were brought into this nation. And they were in the market and they were found to be all of them substandard. Where was that gap in testing? Because it went to the consumers. It was not one, it was millions of condoms sent to the public. But the KEBS came to test it later and found that most of them were not meeting the standards.
Well, maybe I'm not quite aware about that incident. But you remember we have a system where we inspect products before they come. We also do surveillance in the market, and so some cases, if we find it in the market, then we actually we take it from the market and destroy them.
Okay. So now when we talk about calibration of medical equipment, just give us an understanding into the kind of equipment that we are talking about, and then now calibration of the same.
Good. Thank you very much. I think I will take you through your journey to the hospital. I think all of us are candidates of one time visiting. Either you are going with a relative, you are going yourself, or you are taking a loved one. And so when you reach the hospital, one of the things that you go through is you are taken to triage, which is a very critical stage in your diagnosis. So when you get there, some of the measurements that you see is you'll get the nurse taking your temperature. The nurse will also take your blood pressure and also take your weight. So you see, those are 3 measurements that are being done there.
Yes.
And how those measurements perform might determine the kind of attention you are being given. If, for example, you go in and your blood pressure is reading 180, definitely you'll given high priority, and most likely you are taken to admission and interventions.
Immediately, yes.
Yes, and if your blood pressure is normal, you'll be told to take a number and queue. If your temperature, for example, is reading 42, then I think even the other patients who are being seen by the doctor will be told to wait, and you are attended first. Also, when you talk about the weight, for example, and I think I will talk about that later, so you can see the impact of that measurement, which is being done at the triage, can determine the kind of attention you are given at the hospital. Now, if you look at this case here, suppose your blood pressure is actually 180, but it's reading 130. Maybe that the PP machine had some problem. So you will be told to take a number and wait.
On that day? The same day?
The same day. You've arrived there at the triage, seen is 130, which seems normal, and so it's not an emergency. But the truth is maybe it's 180. Now what will happen? It means you'll have a delayed attention, and maybe by the time you are being seen, your health has deteriorated. If your temperature is 40 but it's reading 36.5, definitely it's not an emergency. You will be told to queue and get attended. So you see why the accuracy. And then the other case where I mentioned 180. Suppose it's reading 180 but actually you are 130. You'll be taken into immediate medication, given some attention, which you should not have. And maybe most likely, because of that, you might even be admitted. So you might get a case whereby the person who is supposed to be at home is admitted, and the person who is admitted should be home.
So is this an issue of faulty medical equipment?
Yes, yes. It's what I'm saying, the calibration. Why we calibrate is to make sure that the readings we are getting are correct, so that we make correct decisions on our patients. And that's what I was saying. So that if my pressure is 130, and I go for that measurement, it's 130, and I'm taken to the regime which is correct. I don't want a situation whereby if my pressure is normal, but it's being reflected as abnormally high, and then I'm taken to the wrong. And that's the expectation of every patient. Expectation of every, even when you take your children, you expect that the readings are correct. And that's why we encourage all medical equipment to be calibrated, so that those measurements are reliable and the doctors can make correct decisions as they take you through the treatment.
Okay.
Yeah.
What happens if they were calibrated and they're okay, but somehow in between the usage, they develop error or they cannot maintain the standards? How do you tell that what was actually calibrated is not reading the measurement correctly now?
Yeah, I think we normally have what we call daily checks. So as you maintain your instruments, you have daily checks that you check before you use the equipment, which you call, I would call it in-house calibration. So if it's a temperature, and then you have the reference standard that you're using to check to make sure that it's okay. So you have daily checks, we have intermediate checks that you use, and then maybe once in a while, based on the determined period, then the calibration is done. What we're actually doing, we have come up with what we call a calibration bench. And we've done for hospitals, and this to make sure that they can be able to do calibration in their hospitals when and how they need it.
Under whose supervision, though?
Yeah, so this bench we developed for them, and then we've trained their biomedical engineers, and the biomedical engineers are the ones who maintain equipment, and they are the ones who are handling those equipments in the hospitals. So a number of hospitals, they've come forward. We've developed this, so even at any time they can do their own calibrations internally, and then we occasionally go and calibrate their bench. So you see, it's about bringing those services closer to them so that they can be able to do. And it will address the issue that you mentioned, that maybe it was calibrated, but it has malfunctioned. But I think also the aspect of training. You remember a doctor, when he sees you, he can actually see your eyes and say, I think you have a problem.
Right.
Without even measuring you. So when you train people who are handling these equipments, when they see some readings, they can suspect that something might not be right. And therefore, they can do internal checks to confirm whether it is still within calibration or outside calibration. For example, if I come there and you've been checking patients and you see my pressure is 180, I think before you even indicate 180, you will want to do a second check, isn't
it?
Yes. But if I'm not trained, I will just record 180 and send the patient for some other attention. So you see, there are two aspects. There's the aspect of training, and then there's the aspect of daily checks, and then there's also the aspect of periodic calibration.
Because we're looking at some things here, essentially, that could be, I mean, it blows my mind to imagine that there would be a malfunctioning piece of equipment that could essentially have, some dangerous effects on people, because you would start to treat something that perhaps didn't exist. I'm thinking of high blood pressure medication, from what I'm told, it's heavy stuff that you have to take. So if somebody then does a test on you with a blood pressure machine that is faulty and makes a decision as a result of that, and maybe you don't have high blood pressure, then I can imagine what would possibly happen. Because any medicine, from what we know, that you put into your body is poison first. It is. It's just that it's measured to varying degrees based on what it's supposed to do. But here we are saying that it's possible that equipment could be malfunctioning and would give a reading that is not true. So then how can we ensure, and this is the thing, that we talk about calibration in facilities, but how can you ensure, as Kenya Bureau of Standards, that this is happening across board, that everybody using a you talked about triage, for example, using a thermometer, using a blood pressure machine, and using a weighing scale is actually, because I want to take a thermometer and a weighing scale, for example, and amongst children. If you're taking the temperature of a child and your thermometer is malfunctioning, and you show that this child has a temperature of 38 plus, they want to administer a painkiller immediately, or a fever reducer, which they may not need. If your weighing scale, then, for example, and maybe the child is actually sick and your weighing scale is wrong, they give medication.
So there's a question I wanted to ask Daktari. You've said that you are trying to make sure that there's a standardized when your team visits these hospitals. Are you sure that the hospitals in Kenya, especially the small hospitals, have this equipment? And do they follow your regime in treatment of patients? Because you've seen in many clinics, especially in far-flung areas or in the lower income areas, that these standards are not followed at all, and even the measurements are not there.
I think what is very important is to note that there's a regulation in the country. Hospitals, you don't just open an hospital. There's a number of regulations you need to comply with. There's also surveillance by different agencies, including from the Ministry of Health, and therefore, and then you also know, as I mentioned, the trainings that happen there. So this is to make sure that these people follow this. So when you look at the equipment that we are talking about, it's also in the interest of the hospital to use equipment that are correct. Why? Because if you use an equipment that is wrong, you can run into litigation. And I'm sure you've known even in some jurisdictions people have been sued. So the hospital can be sued. And then also you can lose your license. You can also lose your reputation. So without really even somebody standing behind your back and checking you, there are high stakes as a hospital not to do the right thing in terms of. And also, one of the things that I wanted to mention, maybe because it might sound a bit scary, is that as metrology community, we work together. And if you remember, I mentioned in 1875, when we signed the first meter convention, the idea is to work together globally. So there's metrology community working together with the industry to develop measurements which are stable. I'm sure there's no day you've really gotten scared that my watch is reading 7:30, but actually 7:40. You find it's 7:30, 7:30. Why? Because those measurements are stable. So what we want to achieve, our goal is metrology, is to achieve so that you don't have to worry. If you have a thermometer, although it's not calibrated, it should be stable to give you measurements just stable. So that calibration is to help you have that confidence that you're okay.
And where do you
remember, if you look at, for example, when you're flying, the pilot tells you we are going to descend in the next 10 minutes. It doesn't tell you after how many kilometers. Why? Because the measurement of distance and time is very stable. So within 10 minutes, it will have covered a certain distance. So as metrology, that's our goal, and that's what we are doing, to develop measurements which are stable. So that as a user, you don't really have to worry so much about that. Yeah, you will just be doing it to assure yourself that you are okay, and also to have evidence that you are monitoring your instrument.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to talk about a particular instrument.
Yeah.
It is not a medical one.
Yeah.
But it could have results would take you towards the medical sphere.
Yes.
So follow me here.
Yeah.
There are these gadgets that are used by the police.
Yeah.
They are the ones that are used for measuring the amount of alcohol in your system.
Yes.
And there is another one that is also used for measuring speed.
Yes.
Now, both of these situations could get you in trouble.
Yes.
If the wrong measurement has been arrived at.
Yeah.
That if somebody would take, essentially alcohol is a breathalyzer.
Yes, yes.
So if somebody then measures the amount of alcohol by, the expulsion of breath.
Yeah.
And this gadget is reading above 0.2, whatever is the legal limit.
Yes.
I could get in trouble if I'm on the side of the road.
Yes.
Who's making sure that these gadgets that are being used on the roads are serviced and, I like that word, calibrated?
Yes.
And also this one where if I'm driving in a 50 kilometers zone at 50 kilometers, but this gadget is reading that I was driving at 120 kilometers, I could be in trouble.
Yes.
Who's making sure that those gadgets are calibrated? I'm going to use that word as many times as I can this morning.
It's very important to always, and I think it's an opportunity for our citizens also to appreciate the role of metrology, the role of calibration, and also measurements.
Yeah, because
remember I talked about metrology being the science of measurements.
Yeah.
So every day we endeavor and we work together internationally with all national metrology institutes to develop stable measurements. Remember, when you look at the alcohol blows that the police are using, you talk about the speed measuring devices, maybe the radar, maybe also so when you look at those technologies, they are using very, very stable measurements, and also, so when they are being used, you don't find it anywhere. I'm sure you cannot go and buy a speed governor or a speed gun somewhere in one of the supermarkets.
CEO told us
you can buy it in Kariobangi.
That one you need to report.
Dr. Rotich, Kariobangi has very many things.
Yeah, but I believe that if it's being used by the law enforcement, then it's not that kind of, because they have to buy from the formal channels. So one of the things that happens is This equipment, as I mentioned, before even they are put to the market, they go through rigorous process of quality assurance to make sure that they're coming. And you find some of them, when they're coming, they're actually required to have a certificate of calibration from a National Metrology Institute. And as I mentioned, the National Metrology Institute is actually at the top in the hierarchy of measurements. At the top. If you look at a pyramid, at the top, that's where you have the National Metrology Institute, giving measurements of very, very low uncertainty. So the deviation is not there. So the issue is, as Kenya Bureau of Standards Metrology, we have set up capability to calibrate the speed guns. And what the police are using now, we have calibrated. They have valid calibration certificates, and we occasionally work with them to check and make sure that they are reliable. Also on the speed guns, on the other one for the alcohol blow. So we also have capacity to calibrate for them. So when they deploy, definitely you cannot go wrong. It will be correct. So I think as a motorist, we have a duty also to just be obeying the speed limits, or if you want to drink, don't drive. If you cannot, because you might not drink and know how much you have taken, because when it's measured, it happens. Now, one of the things I wanted to mention, we are not working in isolation as the National Metrology Institute. We work with other national metrology institutes. For example, in the US, we have NIST. In Germany, we have PTB. Those are very, very high-level metrology institutes. We have sent our officers there. We have officers who have even gotten PhD in the US, and they are working in our labs. We have people who have spent 2 years and gotten a PhD also in Germany. So you see, our measurements are comparable. We also participate with comparisons of measurements, what we call key comparisons with these national metrology, and this is organized by BIBM at a very high level. So we have comparisons which are done, and then we meet and discuss these measurements. And if your measurements are good, you can now file what we call claims, calibration and measurement capability in the International Bureau of Weights and Measures database. So if you have a chance, you can Google BIBM, you go to the key comparison database, you will see the capabilities of Kenya. It's not for KEBS, it's for the country. And so these are some of the things. And so we work together, and our goal is to make sure that the measurements that are available in the industry is very stable. You sometimes, you are driving, and I remember when I was coming here, I wanted to be very sure I don't miss the turn, because I knew if I miss, I might need to go very far. And I turned on my GPS, and for sure, when it told me to turn left, it was at the right place. He even took me to the parking. And because the security was telling me, now you have arrived, but the Google Map was telling me, turn right, and you reach. So you see, those accuracies is because of the measurements that we have done. In 2022, we had a redefinition of measurements. One of them was the kilogram. Now you can realize the kilogram in the lab using high measurements, where you're calling it the quantum mechanism. So you see, those are kind of things that really assure us, the industry and also the citizens, that the measurements that are available are really stable.
How would you know if there was a problem? As somebody who was the end user of some of these things, how would you know? Speaking about, okay, fine, we hear about the efficiencies, and we know that, there's a world standard that is being followed. But, things happen. Things go out of whack. How would you know if something went wrong, and then what were you to do?
Good. Let me give you an example. Maybe I can go to the area of dosimetry. That's radiotherapy. If you are going for an X-ray, maybe you are going also for some radiotherapy treatment. Because of the kind of systems in place, control systems. If you enter, for example, into our Cobalt 60 lab, if something, if someone is inside that lab, even if you've done everything, it cannot go on. The instrument cannot go on because it's detecting somebody's inside. If you come out but you've not closed the door properly, it will not go on. If you've left something that the cameras detect shouldn't be there, it will not go on. So you see, there's a lot of internal controls which really minimize the incidences that something can go wrong. Yeah.
It is all good with some heavy equipment and and measurements.
Yes.
But there are crafty Kenyans.
Yes.
Out here.
Yes.
Very many of them. Very crafty.
Yes.
Especially in areas where you expect them to follow their calibration to the letter.
Yes.
And some of them, like the Alcoblo, we know there are rogue officers who can even interfere with the gadget
to reflect the wrong
readings.
Readings.
So how do you handle such situations?
I think what we mentioned is, you see, when you have internal checks.
Yeah.
Let's say, for example, you give me a figure which is high.
Yeah.
On the road. You know, there's a requirement that you be taken to hospital and your blood is taken out for test.
But
really,
so before you reach there,
so the issue is, of course, the problem would be because I get scared. I start telling them, "Please let me go.
Let me go. Let me pay you."
But if you walk the journey as a loyal citizen and lawful citizen, definitely there will be very little disincentives. Yeah, because if you know you cannot get away with it, you just forget about it. Yeah. So I think one of the things that we need is to create awareness to the citizens, on also urge them to follow the law.
So you're saying that people actually don't go the full hog, because if I was in a situation whereby that would happen, is that I don't even realize that, you know what, this breathalyzer, fine, it's done the thing that it's supposed to do. But I should actually say, well, you know what, we should go to hospital. We should go to hospital for you to test me again to check. Because to eliminate this thing that Charles is saying, whereby it's very possible that somebody's tinkered with the machine.
So it's very important that you know your rights, and also you can also be able to require more information. For example, if I go to the hospital and someone checks my temperature, and I find the temperature is a bit strange, I will ask them, "Is this equipment calibrated?" I asked. And they show me the sticker and the calibration stick. Yes. Yeah. So you see the awareness. When the citizen is aware, they can demand certain extra information. Yeah. So if I'm driving, I also want to see the calibration of this speed gun, and also maybe the photo showing when I was.
It was last calibrated.
When I was even doing that speed. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there is a lot, and I think. Working on the systems that they are, really we have very good systems that are able to help and minimize incidences. We talk about when you look at the babies when they are born. Some babies, they require incubation. And so those baby incubators, they require to be calibrated because the temperatures are very critical. If it's high, it will affect. If it's low, it will also affect the child. So you see, with proper engagement, proper trainings, and also working with the management of various hospitals, they're doing that. When you come to dosimetry, where I mentioned about the issue of radiation, you see, we have to protect the radiation officers. That person who is exposing radiations must also check. So we have dosimeters, which you can use to monitor to see how much exposure this person is getting over time. You also need to protect the patient. Because if you are to expose certain millicells, then you need to make sure that it is within the acceptable limits. Because if it's higher, it is also harming the tissues. If it's lower, you are not achieving the kind of treatment you want. Yeah. So I think it's a conversation that is very important, that everybody listens to it and can contribute positively.
Well, you know, I mean, talking about medical equipment, but you know, we can't let you go without talking about bread. and
Yes.
we talk about the measure of things,
Yeah.
is that apparently folks are saying there's not a 400-gram loaf of bread that actually weighs
Yes,
400
yes.
grams,
Yeah.
or 600 grams that actually weighs that.
600. Yeah.
Or do people
Yeah, they do
1.5
1,000.
kg bread that weighs 1.5 kg?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now we see situations whereby people actually could be letting you down as KEBS because they are not using either the proper measurement, or they're just trying to make a quick buck over people's lacking 100 grams kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that people are saying it is rare for you to actually go get a loaf of bread, measure it, that's supposed to be 400 grams, and it comes out to be 400 grams.
Yeah.
That's right up your alley. And why would that? Because it's not the first time we've heard it. It's been
There.
in the chatter forever.
Yeah.
That the bread that's supposed to, because you're asked to give the measure on the packet,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But it's very rarely that number. Why?
I think one of the things is, you remember at the very beginning, I mentioned that there are various agencies handling metrology. At Kenya Bureau of Standards, we handle the scientific metrology, which is actually what I talk about, the traceability of these national measurements to the International System of Units, the SI. Now, we also have the industrial metrology, where we calibrate for the industry the instruments that they're using in manufacturing. Now, we also have the other arm of metrology, which we call the legal metrology. And in Kenya, we have the Department of Weights and Measures who do that, yeah. So in legal metrology, it's about trade, when you're trading. If I go with my tractor of harvested sugarcane and get on the weigh bridge, get offload, and then get on the weigh bridge again, then the differences is what I am paid. If you go to the petrol station and you say you want 5 liters, it runs 5 liters, and that's what you pay for. And that's what we call legal metrology, which is generally enforced by weights and measures. Yes. Now, so some of these things happen. We talk about the variability. But I think the biggest challenge that I wanted to mention is, you remember when I say using the appropriate instrument to measure. So we have cases. I think at the beginning we talked about the issue of the petrol, which has some issues. Only to realize that to realize that the instrument that was being used was not the appropriate. Now, so when you are weighing something, what you are using also, is it calibrated? Because if it's not calibrated, then you could also be giving an erroneous measurement. So that's one of them. Then the other one is some of these products, I'm not very sure because of the storage conditions. You remember when you cook something, there's water. So what happens if you expose to very dry conditions? You can also get it losing water, isn't it? What about if you put something in an environment where there's more moisture, the moisture is high? Some of them are hygroscopic and they can absorb moisture, isn't it? Yeah. So it's an area that I think engagement with the consumers, I think it's very important that the consumers report such incidences so that the manufacturers are also engaged and some corrective actions be done.
How do you actually handle those cases that would come before you where somebody comes to complain?
When we have such complaints, we have a Directorate of Market Surveillance at Kenya Bureau of Standards. And when we get such complaints, we also go to the market ourselves and pick samples, even without any complaint. So we surveil the market. Just like a consumer, we come to the supermarket, the outlets, and we also buy products. And we check, some of them we check labeling on site. And some we take to the labs to test. And when we find there are issues, we seize products. And I'm sure you've seen in many cases where products have been seized, they are being destroyed, and so such cases. And then also when consumers inform us, give us a complaint, we also investigate that complaint immediately. We send officers to the field. Yeah. So we have our own surveillance, and then we also have the consumer. And also, you can also get other manufacturers also, because if I know I'm making bread and somebody is not doing the right thing, I can report. Yeah. So I think as a loyal loyal citizen and a consumer, you have a right to point out where cases where you find somebody is doing shoddy things. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
How frequent do you survey these places to find out, especially the meat products?
Meat products, you remember, as I mentioned, we have different agencies that handle different products. Just like I mentioned, when it comes to issues of somebody cheating with the weighing and selling, so we have the Department of Weights and Measures, but we also come in. You know, as a Mali agency, I cannot see you committing a crime and walk away. I will also do something
about it.
Yeah. So sometimes it might not be directly your mandate, but you have to do something because we are serving the same citizen.
Indeed.
So now, when it comes to your question about how often our officers are always out in the field, yes, following maybe some of the schedules they've designed, but also when we get intelligence, we go.
To find it out.
Yes.
Well, I mean, really enlightening to be able to find out that actually some of these things can be and should be followed. Dr. Henry Rotich is the Director of Metrology and Testing at the Kenya Bureau of Standards, has been our guest this hour. Thank you for sharing these insights with us. And we keep surveilling as we should, and all in part together. Thank you very much.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.